Hey, I just thought I should do a brief intro, as brief as I can, to explain myself. If you've been here on the channel for a little bit, then you know that the last 5 videos I've uploaded have been 5 looks I've done with the Fantasy Cosmetica Harvest of Souls palette, which I think is currently unavailable, and I don't know if they have plans to restock it at all. In the future. There's a chance the last restock was the last restock. However, it was a palette I was able to get with a gift card that my mom got me for Christmas. I totally would have got this palette last year, but I just couldn't swing it in time, so I didn't get it in my hands until the earlier part of this year. Thanks to my mom. So I wanted to showcase it in a bunch of ways for content stuff, because it's a beautiful, beautiful palette. I thought it would be a fun thing to do. Originally, it was just going to be this video that I'm sitting down to film the intro and outro for right now. But I felt really overwhelmed by having to have a big video like this ready by a certain time or whatever. And I'd thought about doing this kind of concept where I basically do the 5 individual looks as 5 individual videos and then do a big roundup video, but then I didn't know if that would be too much, and then my mom had the same idea and basically convinced me to do it. So here we are. That way there's options. I'm gonna include timestamps down below, so you can skip around to whatever look it is you want to see, but just know they also, that look also has its own video that went up before this one. And in those videos, because this video is strictly about eyeshadow, so you're not going to see me do my base or my lips or any of the other stuff. So if you're curious about what I used on the rest of my face, and you want the details on that, you can go to the video for whichever look it is that you're curious about the products for. Each video will be linked in a time card on the screen as we go. Depending on where you're watching this, you might not be able to see the card on the screen, but just know it's the last 5 videos I've uploaded are these looks, and they can all be found in my No Talking Just Makeup playlist as well, so they're super accessible. And they really are no talking, just makeup, meaning I'm sitting there, I'm doing my makeup, there's music playing, I'm not talking at you, we're just vibing, and you know, you can pay as much or as little attention to it as you want. They're shorter videos, while being as comprehensive as possible with what I'm doing. And I know that some people just prefer that. So if you don't want to watch the big video and have to skip around to certain looks, and also maybe just don't want to hear me talk, which is valid, there are those other 5 videos for you too. But for today, strictly eyeshadow, 5 looks with the Fantasy Cosmetica Harvest of Souls palette. Beautiful, beautiful palette. I'm really happy. Actually, I don't know if I'm happy with looks 4 and 5 yet because I'm sitting down to film those today. That's why I look like this. I'm about to film those. But I would imagine I'm happy with all 5 looks, or else this video wouldn't be going up. So I think that's everything I had to say. Oh, here's some swatches, actually. I did do swatches. They're not very good. I did think about redoing the swatches, and then I just didn't do that. So, sorry. There's those. Is that everything I wanted to say? Yes? Yes. Okay. Let's just get right into it. Okay, so here I am showing you some close-ups of the packaging. Feel free to pause and appreciate the artistry. It's so beautifully done. And here is our color story. A really beautiful mix of mattes and shimmers in here. A really beautiful array of textures and pigment levels to choose from and mix and match as we see fit. Just gorgeous. So for this first look, I'm focusing more on the autumnal toned, like upper left quad. That's where most of the look is coming from. So I'm starting with the shade Ambition, which is that really beautiful mustard yellow. I'm showing you in as close to real time as I can. I think it's at like either 1.25 or 1.5 speed. I won't typically go faster than that. If I go all the way up to 2 times speed, it just looks ridiculous, and I feel like clips at that point, at that speed, are unnecessary. So this is me just showing you one dip into this matte so you can see how far this pigment stretches. I'm just kind of lightly fluffing around the edges. Really incredible pigment level on this mustard yellow. It went quite a far way for me. It's just like a buttery, soft, matte shadow. Cutting my crease, so to speak, with a Q-tip and some micellar water, like the rounded edge of the Q-tip, because I didn't want it to be too sharp. I'm not doing a traditional cut crease just here. I initially was gonna do a way more elaborate cut crease, like graphic cut crease situation for this first look. And I basically talked myself out of it because I was like, that will not go well, girl. And now I'm applying a bit more of my eyeshadow primer to that area with a clean Q-tip, and then going in with the shade Sacrifice, which is a really beautiful berry matte. I immediately noticed a bit of a difference in the pigmentation and blendability between this matte and the first one. Not in a bad way, by any means. It's just this one's a bit more densely packed than Ambition was. It needed a bit more building up, needed a bit more pushing around to soften up that edge, especially because I just applied it to a really crisp, clean area that has an edge to it because I cut it with that Q-tip. Still a really beautiful, beautiful shadow, and I was really happy with it once I got it to where I wanted it. It's not that it's not pigmented, it's just that because it's more firmly pressed in than Ambition was, I think, it's just gonna blend different, you know, it's just a bit more, sheer's not the right word, but I think you get what I'm saying. Now I am cutting the crease again, because I'm gonna put down the shade Poison, which they described as like an acid green, like a bright acid green. You can see where all these shadows, these mattes that I'm working with right now, are at on my other eye, because I did do my right eye first before I even started filming, because I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do for this first look yet. So I did play around on the right eye first. You can kind of see, I think, the difference with this shade between freshly applied on my left eye, you know, as I'm pressing it on, versus it having been on for a while on my right eye. It's an interesting shade. It goes on to my eye very pastel. It's really beautiful. But then once it's been on for a while, that greenness kind of fades away and it just kind of looks like a light shadow base, which is really interesting. We'll talk more about that later. Now I'm using the shade Lich on my outer corner. Beautiful, beautiful, like, mucky, army green shade. I always wonder with shades like these how they're going to perform, because I feel like a lot of the time they can turn kind of muddy and just, like, brown on the eye, and they don't stay very green. This one I feel like did a good job holding its form, and it's really decently pigmented and smooth, so I was very happy with that, because sometimes these shadows, these tones, I'm not super happy with. Sometimes they feel like the weak point of a palette for me, because I just feel like they don't perform the way I want them to. This one does. This one does what it's supposed to do. So that's chill. I'm re-intensifying Poison on my right eye now to get it to match better. This shade, I can see what they were doing with this shade. For me, I feel like it makes a really good brightening shade. Like, if you like a matte inner corner and a matte brow bone highlight, that's really good for that. I'm going with the first shimmer here. This is Obsession, which they describe as a holochrome, which when I look at it in pan, I can see, but I feel like on the eye, it just kind of looks like a nice green shimmer. There's another shade in here that is also described as a holochrome that I can kind of see it with more, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But in the case of both of them, I feel like they look more hollow in pan than they do on the eye. So I'm just kind of following along that crisp edge. I basically laid Poison down as a base for the shimmers I wanted to use on the lid. I feel like I probably should have used a different shade to do that in hindsight. Listen, With this first look, I was not on my game. I was actually in a pretty foul mood the whole time I was doing this first look, and I sat down to do looks 1 and 2 on the same day. So I kind of needed to collect myself and fix my vibe. After I got done with this first one, I like couldn't appreciate in the moment. Now I'm going in with the shade Schemes, which is like a really interesting, it's got a really interesting olive undertone. It's like a flaky textured shimmer compared to the first one we put on. The first one's a lot more like smooth and kind of glitzy, but this is one of the shimmers that's much more like flaky and textured and intense, and I just love it. In pan, it kind of just looks like a greeny gold. That green really, I think, pulls through so much more and so beautifully on the eye. It might just be because it's next to the lit shade. Maybe if it was closer to the mustard yellow matte, it would appear more goldy, but I just love this tone, honestly. So yeah, I got done with this first look, and it's like in the moment I couldn't even appreciate how it came together, even though with the benefit of hindsight, I really like it, because I was just in such a bad mood at this point. A lot of things were not going according to plan that day. It was my first day filming in a long time, my first day doing my makeup in a long time, and it was just one of those days. It was a challenge. It was a challenging day. So I needed to take a break and have some lunch before coming back for look 2, have a little emotional support Dr. Pepper to sip on, and yeah, I feel like I do like this look. It is my least favorite of the 5, but I do like it more than I initially did. On to look 2. Now I am actually starting with the shade Poison, because now that I've kind of seen it like laid down as like a bright base for shimmers, like a bright base on the lid, I wanted to see it more as like transition shades, probably not the word, but it's the first shade I'm going in with to make the edges blended as softly as possible around the entire perimeter of the eye. I feel like this is a good choice for that. So this shade is really interesting. It's not what I was expecting it to be, but I do feel like it's really versatile, and I think that makes up for that in a lot of ways. I mentioned earlier, I feel like it would be a really good brightening shade just because of the nature of that really yellowiness of it. That it's almost like a chartreuse. A chartreuse. It leans very, very green, but it looks more yellow on the eye. I would say it looks like a really nice pastel, almost like a canary yellow on the eye. At least that's how it translates to me on my eyes, on my skin. And yeah, I feel like it would be a really good option if you prefer like a matte inner corner highlight or a matte brow bone highlight, and you want like a funky colored one that's not going to be too much. Poison is a really good choice for that. I think that primarily will be how I use it going forward. Now I'm starting to build the halo eye shape with the shade Knowledge, which is just kind of like a really perfect mid-tone, kind of like a grassy green shade. Really beautiful. This matte, if I remember correctly, performed a bit more like the Berry matte shade did, in that it didn't go on super pigmented straight out of the jump. I think this one's a bit more firmly pressed, not like buttery and powdery with a lot of kickback to it, like Ambition and I think Lich both were. Again, I filmed these kind of a bit ago. That's my bad. I'm just going off of memory here. But it's still, and in true fantasy Cosmetica fashion, the blend is still just so smooth. Like, I don't expect all mattes to be created equal. I was kind of pleasantly surprised by the array of matte formulas that we got in this palette alone. I thought it was very fun. I thought it was a very fun thing for them to do, but it is something to bear in mind if you're thinking about picking up this palette, because I feel like it kind of differentiates from the rest of their palettes in that sense. There's just so many shades to choose from. There's so many different pigments we're working with in here. And depending on the pigment, of course, the formula is of each shade is going to be there's going to be some variation. because of the way that the colors kind of have to interact. So there's all that. I'm just blending around my edges, softening up. Now I'm going in with the shade Necromancer, which is the deep, deep, beautiful, dark green. They do deep, dark, inky colors for their mattes so well. The first palette that I got from them had a real, what drew me in was it had a really deep, beautiful, like, eggplant purple in it, which is just my favorite purple tone, I think. And oh my god, is that shadow just so beautiful. So that immediately made me kind of really zone in on this brand, was that first palette I tried from them. Because those kind of colors are actually really, really difficult for a lot of brands to do. So the fact that they execute those kind of tones so well put them on my radar in a pretty big way. And now, you know, they're one of my favorite eyeshadow brands. So there's all that. I'm kind of loosely calling this a halo eye. I don't think it's really like a traditional halo eye. But you'll see later when I applied the shimmer, the way that the shift kind of transforms over my eye, depending like where the shimmer is on over that bare spot in the center of the lid versus where it's kind of layered over the mattes on either end of the eye. It's really just kind of a messy, smoky eye, but the halo effect is there. It's just, it's not, it's definitely not a crisp, clean halo. But yeah, I was just really interested in pairing the greens with the purples for the second look. Yeah, this was the second look of the day. My eye watering had already been giving me some trouble with the first eye. There's Puka's tail. Puka was with me during all this nonsense. My eyes were giving me trouble that day. They were giving me trouble with the first look. You might have noticed there was some patchiness happening for a minute there on my left eye, where the poison shade was laid down, and I kind of had to just trust pressing the shimmers over top to fix it, and more or less it did. Back with the finished base, gonna layer on Ensnare, which, looking at it in pan, is not really a purple tone I would generally gravitate toward, but it is so different on the eye than I was expecting it to be. It's way more of a purple tone that I can get with actually like on the eye. It looks pretty different in pan. It almost looks like cooler on the skin. And again, it's a really beautiful, oh no, I just got shadow all over myself. I'm making a mess over here. But yeah, it's just another really beautiful, more textured shimmer shade. Very glitzy, very glam. So yeah, there's that. I did accidentally, with this second look, discover potentially a new favorite blush and highlight combo. So if you're interested in the details on that, definitely check out that video. This was a fun one. I was really happy with the way this came together. I feel like for this first day of filming, sorry, I'm cracking my knuckles. For this first day of filming, we wound up pulling it together, even though it started off really rough. This is my favorite of the 5 looks, for sure, is look number 3. I was dying to pair the purples with the like deep blues in this palette. So I'm starting off with the shade Patience, which is a really, really, really quite light, dusty, pastel lavender shade. Yeah, the 2 lavender mattes in here, really all the lavender shades, and there were a number of shades in this palette that really reminded me, it kind of reminded me of a fleshed out version of the color story of the Moonfall palette from Shroud. I'm deepening up, I'm adding some depth with the next lavender shade, which is Ancient. Again, really dusty, desaturated kind of lavender. Beautiful, love, love, love. Anyway, there are tones in this color story that remind me a lot of the Moonfall palette from Shroud Cosmetics. Shroud Cosmetics unfortunately doesn't really exist anymore. But when I saw this palette, I was like, ooh, I might be interested in getting that, because while I loved the Moonfall palette to death, loved that color story, I thought it was so gorgeous. I always had a really hard time with the Shroud Cosmetics shadow formula. So I was like, I might declutter my Moonfall palette and just get this Fantasy Cosmetica one at some point. And so, of course, since getting this, I really wanted to recreate, now I'm pressing Phylactery on the lid. It's like a deep, almost a navy blue shade. It's got a real tealiness to it, though. So not really, not quite. All the blues kind of have this really teal, this like green leaning edge to them, but they're still very like truly blue, very beautiful. It's like an ocean blue in a way. Particularly the shimmer actually that I'm going to put on later is very much an ocean color. But the look I initially was going to do with the blues and purples was I was going to recreate this look I did with the Moonfall palette that I've always really loved, but that I felt like could have been improved upon by being done with an eyeshadow formula that I personally prefer. That's not what I wound up doing here. I will eventually do that. I will eventually do that kind of cat eye look with the blues and purples, but for this time I kind of felt like doing a really intense smoky eye, you know? A blurple smoky eye. And I was really happy with the way that it all came together, which I kind of figured I was going to be regardless. I just love these tones together. The lavenders make really good transition shades. They are almost similarly to Poison, the acid green that I mentioned, kind of pulls more pastel. Since these are both more pastel-y, but more like desaturated, they are also more on the sheer side. I generally found, though, that they both blended a lot smoother than Poison did. Poison took a lot of work. Poison took a lot of blending and building up, whereas Patience and Ancient, I feel like, don't. Now I'm using the shade Immortality, which is also described as a holochrome. And again, like with Obsession, the green shimmer we talked about earlier, I see it more in pan than I do on the eye, but oh my goodness, is this not such a beautiful blue shimmer. Like, I kind of just don't care. Holochromes are pretty much never going to be the reason I purchase a palette. I'm not going to go out of my way for them. It's not a finish that calls to me. So I don't necessarily care if a shadow comes across with that really holochromy finish on the eyes, because it's not something I go for anyway. However, I am layering on a bit of Eternal, which is this beautiful, beautiful, light, almost silvery lavender shimmer. And I could have left it at the blue shimmer and let it be and been happy with it, but I feel like adding on this lavender, mostly in the center of the eye, really took this look to where I wanted it. Really amped it up. I think that it's so beautiful. These shimmers kind of layered on top of each other. And it pulls in the purples from the crease as well. And then Souls, which is like a light, sheer, kind of flaky, more emollient shimmer. The really light blue shimmer in here. It says it's supposed to shift like blue to pink. I don't know if I see that so much, but it's just a really nice pop to add on the inner corner. And we're finishing off with some mascara in a second here. I'm going to add a Periwinkle mascara any minute now. Hello. There it is. This mascara from Lethal Cosmetics. I really like these mascaras to pop on the lower lashes to add a pop of color, a little bit of extra interest on the lower lash line. They don't do much for my upper lashes, but they're great on the lower lash line, and I really like this Periwinkle shade. I think it's good with this eye. So I'm very happy with that. Look at this. Look at this. So The video for this look performed the best here on YouTube of all of them. But look 2 has the most likes on Instagram, so let me know down below which of the 5 looks wound up being your favorite, because I'm curious. For look 4, I kind of felt like fucking around, so I'm mixing together the shades Knowledge and Poison. So Poison is that really light, bright, pastel-y green, with Knowledge, which is the mid-tone grassy green you guys saw me use earlier. And I mixed them together to kind of create this more like light, milky, grassy tone. I really like greens like these. I just kind of felt like playing around because I knew I wanted to do like a brighter green eye, like a springy eye, but I didn't want it to be like a poison tone eye. And I generally find that mixing shadows is a fun thing to do, like to literally mix them like you would mix paint. And if it's a formula that I feel, this is me telling myself, like checking to see if I got basically the same color on my eye, and I did. And I also mixed Knowledge and Necromancer. Necromancer is that deep dark green, again, because I didn't want it to be a super dark color in my outer corner. I just kind of wanted a little bit of depth, so I did mix it with the more mid-tone green so that it wouldn't be too dark. And I'd say I succeeded. I think it looks darker here than it did in the pictures I took for Instagram, so do with that what you will. I just didn't, I wanted this to be a lighter, fresher eye, so I didn't want too much depth. So yeah, I want you to know that mixing shadows to customize your color is always an option. Especially if it's a formula you're really familiar with that you feel reasonably confident you can do that with. If there's like a palette that's come out and you're looking at it like, oh, I want it for that one color, you might already have that color on hand if you want to dive into your collection and take a look at the shadows you've got in color stories that you already have to dip into. You might be able to mix that color. You might not need to buy a whole new palette for that color because you might already be able to mix it with stuff you already have. Conversely, you might be looking at a new palette and going like, oh, I love everything about it, but I wish there was this kind of tone in there. You might be able to mix, again, something in your collection already to get that tone. You might already have that tone on hand. But you might also be able to mix that tone from shades that are in the color story already. But yeah, I always would encourage you to play around with your makeup, play around with tones, you know, to get something you're happy with. I'm adding blush into the crease area and to like blending around my edges with a pink blush here. Normally this is something I would love to do. I slightly regretted doing this. I like it more now than I did at the time. Like, I can look back on it and be like, actually, it's fine. But in the moment, I was kind of going like, I feel like this is muddying up, and I'm not super happy with how it looks, but we're gonna move on. It's already been done. It's fine. And then I did add a little bit of highlight to my lids. I was gonna wear this highlighter on my face, but then I felt like the blush was glowy enough on its own and highlighter wasn't really necessary, so I just used it to kind of top off the eyes, and I feel like I really like the way that it looks. I wound up being fine with the way that this came together. It is not my favorite, but like I could leave the house like this and be fine, so. I just thought it was kind of fun. I love pink and green. I do. I love those colors together. I love that for like a nice little spring look. Or even a summer look. Alright, final look. I kind of just decided to keep it simple and do a bit of a smoky wing. I'm going in with the shade Phylactery first to kind of start building out that outer corner. There are a couple different ways I'll do a winged look. If I'm doing like a smoky winged look, I'll usually start by building the wing first. I'll build that wing, build it out, smoke it out, and then work on the crease and the lid, because with a smokier look, you kind of want it all to be integrated. You kind of want it all to be more like flowing in to each other. Whereas if you wanted a sharp wing, like a more traditional cat eye situation, I would do the bulk of the eye makeup first and do the wing last. And I probably, like here I'm working with powder. For a smokier look, I'm more likely to work with powder. And if I want more of like a sharp liner situation, I'll use liquid eyeshadow. Like I'll use the About Face eye paint to do that. And now I'm smoking it out with the shade Undead, which is like a nice mid-tone, kind of desaturated teal. And at this point it was the only shade in the palette I hadn't used. So we went with the teal liner moment to herald the approach of summer, so to speak. And I'm just kind of really taking my time going back and forth between building up the depth with phylactery and smoking and softening everything out with Undead. Regardless of what you're doing with the wing, take your time. That's the best bit of advice I have for you on that front, and that's coming from someone who by no means does a perfect wing every time. I will always be happier with a winged liner when I've really taken my time with it, even if it's still not perfect by the end. It's so much better than it would have been if I just kind of like tried to quickly slap it on and move along. Oh, now I'm pressing the shade Souls, which you guys saw me use as an inner corner highlight earlier. That's going all over the lid. Beautiful, beautiful, sheer, twinkly blue shimmer. Love, love, love so much. That's really all there is to that. But anyway, if I had to rank the 5 looks, that's really easy for me. I think I'm going from most favorite to least favorite. It's gonna be look 3, 5, this one in second place, look 2, and then it would be 4 and then 1. So 3, 5, 2, 4, 1 is my ranking. Let me know your ranking down below if you feel so inclined. I'm really happy with these looks, really happy with this palette. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys liked this concept, it kind of being like a series with all the looks and like a compilation video to finish it all off. I might have a similar series already planned to do with another big palette that another indie brand just recently released, you know, a certain collaboration with a certain movie featuring a certain great big Huey Lewis fan. That's the next thing I'm working on, is a 5 looks with that palette, so subscribe if you'd like to stick around for that. I was really happy to get to finally sit and work with this palette after way, way, way too long. I just think this color story is so gorgeous, so brilliant. This incredible amalgamation of like jewel tones and cool, dusty, desaturated shades and like the grunginess of it. I love. Look at this. Is it not glorious? I'm a big, big fan. Packaging is beautiful. Concept is beautiful. I dig it. I also just wanted to take some time to show Fantasy Cosmetica a little bit of love, because seeing their statement about the tariffs and how the tariffs are likely to affect their business, my heart like jumped into my throat. This is like one of my favorite indie brands. This is one of the best shadow formulas, not just in the indie space, but I think in general. I have 4 Fantasy Cosmetica palettes at my disposal at this point, and I love every single one of them. I've never had a bad experience with their shadows. I just think they do a beautiful, beautiful job, so the idea that they might not be around in the scarily near future sucks. That's like really upsetting for me to think about, actually. I know a lot of brands, specifically smaller brands, are really feeling the effects of these tariffs, and it fills me with boiling rage. And you know, I just think now it's like more important than it has ever been, and it's always been really important, but more so now than ever, to show some indie brands and the smaller brands some love. So if you're able to, please check them out. I highly recommend. And yeah, that does it for this video. This was super, super fun to do. I think this might become a series, because why not? Let me know if you have this palette and what you think of it, or what you think of the brand in general. What's your favorite product from them? I'm dying to know. Please let me know in the comments. I'm gonna link Fantasy Cosmetica down below. There will also be links to everywhere I'm at on the internet, everything I'm doing on the internet, if you care about that. If you haven't already liked this video or subscribed, consider doing one or the other or both. Neither are mandatory, but both are highly appreciated. And we have fun here. I hope you guys are doing good out there. I hope you and your loved ones are all staying safe and healthy during these crazy, crazy times. As always, I'm thinking about you. Be kind to others, be good to yourselves, and I'll see you back here for the next one very soon. Bye. Quick mic check. We haven't had to do a mic check in a while, so let's just check that mic. Check, check, check. And we are on. I guess this lighting's fine. Quick pause so I can drink some water. Because the vocal fry is real. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Let me get my Android. Wow. I will always be happier with a winged liner when my phone is buzzing. Shut up. The two lavender mattes in this palette. Oh. Delicious. I'm sorry, wait, that was disgusting. I might not include that in the video. Let me start over. My head is cut off. There we go. Oh no.